Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies. Today we're going to be replacing the spark plugs on this 2013 Chevy Malibu with a 2.5 liter engine in it. Make sure you check out my video library to find the brakes, cabin air filter, and other regular maintenance procedure videos on this vehicle and vehicles very similar with the 2.5 liter and other similar models that'll be listed in the description below. First, you're going to pop the hood, obviously, to get to the engine. Make sure you stay tuned. I'm going to cover the tools used, torque specifications, the parts that I would recommend, tools I would recommend, and a bunch of good stuff. So like, subscribe, and share while you're watching. Tell everybody about me. And if this video does help you out, make sure you comment below with the year, make, model of the vehicle that this video helps you out on. First, we need to remove this engine cover. I thought I used a 10mm to remove this, but it looks like I used a Torx in this video. I didn't write this part down, so I apologize for that, but I have notes on everything else past this part. So, just because I don't have this one, don't get too disappointed. To get this cover off, you do have to take the oil filler cap off. Don't try too hard if that's still on, and make sure all your screws are completely backed out so you can remove the cover. When you do finally get it off, just set it off to the side, somewhere you're not going to step on it or lose any parts on it. When you do get it off, you're going to have to reinstall the oil filler cap so you don't get any dust or dirt or anything fall into the oil system itself or to the valve cover. You can see I didn't back them out all the way, but no problem. If I do find the size of that Torx I use, I will list that in the description below. Now we have access to the coil packs. 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the cylinders in order. Number 1 is nearest the timing belt or timing chain. To remove this little connection or your wire connector, the little red tab needs to be pushed back towards the firewall, and then you can push down on the tab of the actual connector and put force towards the firewall again to slide the connector off. And later on in the video, you'll see a much better view of taking the connectors off, so if you'd like, skip through or stay tuned. To get the spark plug coil off, you're going to use a 10mm socket. I used a deep one, but it doesn't really matter. If you need a mechanic's tool set to complete this job, make sure you look for a link in the description below to purchase one, as well as the torque wrench if you need one, a code reader, stuff like that. To get the coil off, just pull directly straight up. Might take a little bit of oomph. And when we reinstall this stuff, I have some pointers and tips on that as well. I usually like to replace the boots. So that little boot right there from the coil pack itself down to the spark plug, there's a little spring inside there, a diode I believe, or like a fuse type thing, not quite sure what it was. But I usually like to replace these boots when I'm doing this job. The owner of this vehicle provided the parts for me to replace on this vehicle, and a lot of them were wrong, such as this. These boots do not match up. I took it out and tried to put them on, just thinking maybe it was an updated model or updated design, and no, didn't work, but I tried. So if you can, make sure you get boots when you order the parts for this vehicle or for this job. Now to remove the spark plug, I used a 5/8 socket, spark plug socket that is, that has a magnetic little mechanism or magnetic pickup inside of it. So when the spark plug does get loose, it holds it in the socket to remove it. If you don't have a socket like that, you could use a little 5/8 hose that I'm going to show you about in a little bit to remove it, or remove the spark plug. You can see the spark plug is almost already out, and we're only 4 or 5 minutes into this video, if that. This job, the whole thing, took me less than an hour. That's making the video too, which makes it a lot harder for me. And I'd say the customer or my friend that brought me these parts, I don't think he paid more than $100 for everything, and that was the air filters, spark plugs, and a bunch of other stuff. When you remove your spark plugs, make sure you take a look at them. Take a read of them. See if there's anything out of the ordinary. They're wet, super dry, corrosion, stuff like that. Here is a huge tip. I'm using a little, I think it's a 3/8 hose right there, to install the spark plug. This will make it so you do not cross-thread the spark plug into the head, which is super common if you try to use like the spark plug socket itself, especially if the wrench is on. So in this case, I've never stripped out a head using the hose to install the spark plugs. Go as tight as you can with that hose, and then get your torque wrench. I'm using a 3/8 torque wrench with a 6-inch extension. Probably should have went with a little bit longer one, and I'm going to switch to a longer one in the video, or later in the video. When you tighten your spark plugs down, it is very important you go to factory torque specifications, which on this vehicle is 15 foot-pounds. That's 15 foot-pounds with a 5/8 spark plug socket. Now, when reinstalling your new coil, your coil, hopefully with a new boot, new spring and all that, I use dielectric grease on both the connection to the wiring harness and at the bottom where the spark plug goes up inside the boot. I'm pretty liberal on this. I don't pack it full of grease, but I like to put some grease in there so it makes a better waterproof connection and doesn't allow any water to get in there over time. Also, lets the electrode jump across the connection easier if it needs to. When you're tightening down the bolts or nuts, they're bolts, to the coil on the valve cover, these ones aren't too important to torque down, but if you want to, 10 millimeters, and we torque these ones down to 89 inch-pounds. Not the most important thing. They are really, really weak screws, so be careful with them. Comment below, what are they? Bolts, screws? I always forget on this part. If you have any points, tips, tricks, anything like that, make sure you comment below as well. Let everybody know. I personally don't use any type of anti-seize on my spark plugs, but if you do, comment below. Let me know. What's your take on that? So that's pretty much it on the number one cylinder. If you have codes like a p0301, 302, 303, or a p0304, this video might help you solve that code or fix that code as well. Moving on to the number 2 spark plug. First, again, you need to remove the electrical connection to your ignition coil. I ended up getting the flathead, makes it a little bit easier, gives you a little more leverage. Push that red tab towards the firewall, and then you can push down on the plastic connector and slide the whole connection back. And it should slide off. These ones weren't that hard. On like a Toyota, they always break. This one is fairly easy. Again, 10 millimeter socket to get your bolt holding the ignition coil on. This part's fairly easy. Again, when you pull out the spark plug, you do want to take a look at it, see what it looks like. See if you could read that there's anything else going on with your engine or how you are running. Hopefully, they all look perfectly normal. They'll look like a new spark plug, but just have a little bit of wear, like a light gray or a tannish color to them, but look fairly normal, and that's perfectly good. Hopefully, that's what yours look like. You can see this spark plug was in there pretty darn tight. I don't think it was tightened down to factory specifications. Well, nobody ever did them before, so they had to have been, but they tightened up pretty good. The head expands and contracts when it gets hot and cold too, so that can contribute to the spark plug tightening up. Take a look at that spark plug, see if it looks abnormal, see if you see anything that catches your attention. Maybe it is oil fouled, or you see like it's a little shiny and you're like, oh god, it's oil. That could be bad valve guide seals or piston rings, so check that out. And also could be the PCV valves not working properly, causing excessive pressure in the valve cover or oil system. I used that hose to tighten the spark plug down or to get the thread started, and then used my 3/8 torque wrench to tighten the spark plug down to 15 foot-pounds. Using the dielectric grease here on the bottom of the boot where the spark plug meets the boot, and on the top where the electrical connection from the harness plugs onto the coil, like on all the other ones. I've never replaced the coils as a regular maintenance procedure. I've always replaced the coils as a check engine light comes on for the p0301 or 302, 303, 304. That's when I've replaced coils. But in the past few years, I've replaced coils for people requesting them, just wanting to replace them as a regular maintenance thing. Every single person has come back to me and said that their vehicle has made a night and day difference. So I'm starting to think coils might be a little bit more important than I've thought in the past. If your vehicle's running sluggish, you're not getting the regular or the old efficiency that you used to be out of your vehicle. Maybe the coils are bad or going bad. I know the oxygen sensors in the past, same thing. I haven't replaced those until the code comes on. But getting more into the maintenance side of vehicles and making sure I'm following proper vehicle maintenance procedures and logs, I'm seeing that the oxygen sensors are being called around 100,000 to 120,000 miles a lot as well. So I've been slacking on my Mackin on some of this maintenance. Maybe your coils can go bad or your oxygen sensors have gone bad. That can be causing your vehicle to run not as efficient as it used to. Just something to ponder, think about. Regular maintenance is the best thing you could do to keep your vehicle running good, lasting the longest, and getting the best fuel efficiency too. Number 3, spark plug out. These ones all looked good. My friend treats his vehicles pretty darn good, and I think there's only about 80,000 miles on this vehicle, so he's right on time for his spark plugs. I'd recommend replacing the spark plugs about every 80 to 100,000 miles. On my personal vehicles, I do it a little excessively, about every 60,000 miles, just because I do it at home, and it's not that hard for me. Tighten the spark plug down to 15 foot-pounds using that 5/8 spark plug socket. Everything was going good on this. If you don't have the torque wrench, a lot of people do just tighten your spark plugs to the German torque spec of good and tight. But do what you want. I always use a torque wrench and check the factory specification and use those if possible. Now I have my number 3 ignition coil ready to be installed with my dielectric grease and whatnot. Push it directly down, hopefully get it to snap on the, or firmly press onto the spark plug. I don't think it snapped. Just make sure you get a nice little firm connection right there. Dielectric grease helps that connection as well. Now, if you're chasing the code like a p0303, that would be your number 3 spark plug or coil or a problem with the number 3 cylinder itself. So p0303, in that case, what I would do, I would take a coil out, pull that number 3 coil out, swap it with, say, my number 1 coil. So put my number 1 coil in the number 3 position and my number 3 coil in the number 1 position. Go drive it around and see if the code swaps cylinders. If it swaps cylinders, then you know your coil is bad. If the code stays at the same cylinder it was originally at, then you might have a little bit more of a problem. That could be a wiring problem going to the coil. It could be the spark plug itself being bad. It could be a bad or low compression in the chamber, like a blow-by coming by, getting oil into the piston, or the compression of the piston being pushed by into the oil system itself. So there could be more problems. Hopefully p0301 or p0303 ends up being a spark plug coil. That's your easiest case scenario. And the most likely case scenario, I actually have a neighbor keeps bugging me. She has a p0303 that won't go away. I put a coil on it, and it needs an engine. Well, probably needs a head gasket, but engine will be easier, faster. Now, let's say you pull out this spark plug and it looks a little bit different. It has a little white ashy insulator. Maybe the electrodes are melted a little bit. That could indicate a case of overheating or the engine just running hot. Let's say maybe there's a little bit of a brown crust that you see on your spark plug. I see that more on the older Chevys, especially in the back banks, the V8s. So a oil crustiness, that's just like fumes, bad PCV valve, something like that would cause that one. You're getting a light oil in the combustion chamber, or it could be if you use a lot of fuel additives, that as well could cause a brown crustiness on your spark plug. Get the dielectric grease onto this number 4 ignition coil. This would be a p0304 if you're having a misfire, so the number 4 coil or number 4 cylinder, that is. This vehicle ended up having a different code. It was a P06DC, and I will have a video covering that fix, or what we did to get that fix. So make sure you check out the video library for other videos on this vehicle or other like vehicles with this engine. This is pretty much it. Getting this number 4 coil buttoned up will get this job done. This will be for the p0301, 302, 303, 304s, and whatnot. Make sure you comment below, ask questions. If this video does help you out, comment below. Maybe one of these two videos coming up at the end might help you out as well. I have a lot of videos covering this engine and maintenance on this vehicle coming out. So stay tuned, like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate you guys watching. I will see you guys on the next, hopefully helpful video. Thanks for checking me out.